Hazard pay is back on, baby. In the Biden third stimulus package, you will see no less than 3 hazard pay provisions. 1 hazard pay for public sector, 2 hazard pay for private sector, and finally 3 hazard pay tax deduction or tax credit. Hence, how do you qualify for hazard pay? What is an essential worker? In this throwback video on Overnight's LALATE, I explained the concept of hazard pay, how you calculate hazard pay, who is essential worker, at least under the HEROES Act of 2020 as written by Nancy Pelosi. The provisions are generally conceived the same way. Will Joe Biden do exactly the same way? Perhaps not. But at least the concepts work exactly the same and the calculations work much the same way. Enjoy this Overnight's LALATE video explaining hazard pay. Are new words out of the White House today suggesting that hazard pay is in hazard of not getting approved? Hey everybody, this is LA with the second stimulus check and stimulus package update for today, our second of several second stimulus package updates. This one's about hazard pay, that $10,000 for the federal government, which could come to you if you're an essential worker, if you work during the pandemic, and if your employer applies for it when the bill is possibly approved. But really shocking news today from Steve Mnuchin, who sort of threw out some words here and there about almost everything. And one of them was suggestive that the White House may not back certain plans for certain types of businesses. It's really quite interesting. Hazard pay, as you know, pays up to $10,000 to essential workers, defined as essential workers, in the hazard pay bill, which is the HEROES Fund of the HEROES Act. But the employers have to apply for you. It's calculated based upon the number of hours you work from January to the present, times $13 an hour, up to $10,000 if you made $100,000 or less last year, and up to $5,000 if you made over $100,000 last year. What's really quite interesting today is that Steve Mnuchin, the White House, really was out talking about all these different second stimulus check packages, whether it's the check, whether it's unemployment assistance, whether it's rental assistance. They were talking about all these different plans. But when it came to hazard pay, there wasn't a direct comment about hazard pay, but there was a side remark that's sort of troubling. And here we go. When asked about whether or not states and municipalities, which includes hazard pay employees, would get benefits because of the impact of COVID-19 on them, Steve Mnuchin says that the White House does not want to bail out states that were mismanaged before the virus hit. Wait a second. If you recall, essential workers under hazard pay include state and local workers. It includes everyone from public works officials, police, fire. It includes, highway and traffic. All those people who worked in the pandemic. And here comes Steve Mnuchin out of nowhere saying, you know what? We don't want to give any help to those states and counties and cities that were badly run, based upon his interpretation, what's badly run, before the pandemic. It doesn't say hazard pay in that comment, but it basically says, hey, if you are an essential worker and you work for state or local government, we may not give you hazard pay, or we don't want to give you hazard pay. Really, really troubling. The Democrats are proposing a $1 trillion stimulus package. The Democrats are proposing a $3 trillion stimulus package. Mitch McConnell wants a $1 trillion second stimulus package, and the White House wants it at $2 trillion. But what the White House has not done is really try to give you any details. In fact, when Steve Mnuchin was asked to give more details today, you know what he said again? I'm not giving you more details. I mean, he's probably frustrated that he's not on a Tahitian holiday like the rest of the members of Congress. As you know, they're on a Tahitian holiday with their feet in the jacuzzi, sipping Mai Tais and listening to bad music and singing off key because they don't take enough vacations. And they're coming back in late July while Steve Mnuchin is unfortunately in Washington answering everyone's, or trying not to answer everyone's questions. And when they come in late July, they have only a few number of weeks to get hazard pay approved, and then they go on another Tahitian holiday. Well, here's Steve Mnuchin at home, probably jealous he's not on a Tahitian holiday, and he has to answer questions about everything. And sure enough, his response is, we don't want to give money to people, to states that aren't well run. Well, that is really troubling because what is well run? In the same breath, he said PPP was so well run. Well, it wasn't. And he wants to extend PPP. What does this do for hazard pay? This is the net result when we talk about hazard pay. 1, we have Democrats supporting it. 2, we have Republicans saying nothing about it, whether it's Mitch McConnell, congressional leaders, or Steve Mnuchin. We have them literally never mentioning the word hazard pay. It's really quite disconcerting. First, they don't mention hazard pay. Then they don't mention essential workers. 3, what they do mention, Republicans, whether it's Mitch McConnell and Steve Mnuchin, is they talk about finite industries, which sort of sounds like someone who's trying to run for president again is trying to get the vote of that district. He says, I want to talk about manufacturing people and make sure that manufacturing people get a lot of money in a second stimulus package. Well, okay, were those manufacturing people working during the pandemic? Were those manufacturing people essential workers? I have all these viewers of this channel who worked during the pandemic that are essential workers, who qualify as essential workers. And here you have, on the other hand, Republicans not wanting to talk about it, but wanting to talk about people who didn't even work during the pandemic. Now, I'm not throwing shade at one group or the other. Ultimately, a lot of people need a lot of assistance. But when we're talking about hazard pay, here are people, whether they're teachers, defined as essential workers, city or state employees defined as essential workers, food services, whether it's grocery stores delivering the food defined as essential workers, aerospace and transportation and shipping and driving, all defined as essential workers. We have nothing being said from the Republicans about these essential workers. What makes it even more complicated is the following. I had a couple comments, and it almost seems like it's the same person dropping the same comment every day. But I had a couple comments from people saying, I'm an essential worker because my governor says I am. No. This is what's so important. Under hazard pay, the essential worker is defined by the bill. It's not defined by your governor. It's not defined by your job. It's not defined by your employer. It's not defined by your city or state. Every city and state has a definition for essential workers. Every state law that a governor can reference has a definition for essential workers. That's not the one in this bill. The bill actually has its own definition of essential workers. And there's a lot of stuff in there that is not written very clearly. Overnight, a lot of you drop comments, am I an essential worker? How about this? You didn't mention my group of people. Ultimately, if you watched our videos over the last couple of days and you didn't hear your group of people mentioned as essential workers, it doesn't mean that I don't want to give you money. I mean, if I had them, if I was writing the bill, I would make it clear so you would know whether you get the money. Ultimately, if you're not mentioning that group of people, you're not defined as essential workers. If you are defined, sometimes very clearly, in the case of dentists, they have their own line item. Dentists are essential workers. It's actually a whole paragraph. Dentists are essential workers. I don't know. Maybe there must have been a dentist on the congressional committee that wrote the bill. But dentists are essential workers. If you have one of those gray areas, which I have got in the comments, then I don't know what's going to happen. Gray areas for essential workers under hazard bill are the following. They are Security guards. I get so many questions about security guards. Walmart, Costco, Target, CVS, Walgreens. I'm not here to dispute or argue with you what your businesses do. I mean, we all know what your business does. Someone said, "Oh, Costco's a grocery store." Okay, I'm not I'm not going to jump in the comments and argue with you whether Costco is a grocery store or not. I'm just telling you that under hazard pay, essential workers is defined as grocery stores, but is not defined as retail operations. So if you're selling socks and you're selling jeans and some cooking supplies, that's not essential workers. But if you're selling milk and eggs, you are. So it's just all over the place. It's not my job to interpret the laws. It's my job to report to you where you apply. So there is that problem. The problems with essential workers under the hazard pay are just all over the place. And my concern for the viewers of my channel who I want to get a hazard pay is threefold. I have three deep concerns about hazard pay for viewers of my channel. One, the hourly calculation. Boy, a lot of my viewers don't work on the hourly, but are defined as essential workers. How do they do it? Someone who is a trucker dropped in the comments, well, I know how many hours it takes me to ship something, so that's easy. Okay, that might solve the problem. Two, essential workers who are independent contractors. Ironically, the bill says it covers essential workers who are independent contractors in certain industries, but who applies to them? They apply themselves. Three, essential workers who have been laid off or been fired or furloughed. I'm inherently worried that if you don't have contact with your employer anymore, will your employer really apply for you? Four, the entire thing about employers applying for you. I still hate it. I absolutely detest it. Everyone in the comments below hates this thing in the bill that the employer applies for their essential employee for hazard pay. I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it. Why? Because the law says they don't have to do it. And two, it's a bookkeeping nightmare. It's a lot of work, and they're not getting paid to do it. As you know, the Romney plan, which I detailed in the last few days, the Romney plan actually pays the employer to do it. Thank God. The federal government will give them a stipend or a deduction to do it for you. But boy, I just don't think the employer is going to do it for you. So that's the next thing I'm worried about. Finally, one of the most important things that I'm worried about with hazard pay for essential workers is that there's gray areas. There are gray areas everywhere, whether you're a security guard, whether you're Walmart and Costco or Target or CVS or Walgreens, and you're selling something, but it's not pandemic-ish something. You know what I'm saying? You're not selling pharmacy items. You're selling cooking supplies, or you're selling, hair and grooming things. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, and I don't know who's going to determine what to do. It's great if you worked at Walgreens, and Walgreens says, yes, we have decided all our employees are essential workers. We are going to apply for hazard pay for all our employees, essential workers. That's wonderful. Amen to that. That is great. My concern is that you'll have an employer that says, you know what? We don't know if you're essential. It's too gray. It's not clear. We're not going to apply for you. That's what I'm really worried about for you. Ultimately, hazard pay will heat up. It's not heating up now. Why is it not heating up? Because of news reporters. News reporters are not asking Steve Mnuchin and all the other people who are still in town and not on the Tahitian vacation, what do you think about all these different items of the second stimulus package? They're just asking them about broad stroke things, because the news reporters are just not sophisticated enough. They're not asking them about hazard pay or rent assistance and all these other things are so much more complicated. And FPUC, they're just not asking Mnuchin these questions. So they're getting off lightly by saying, I don't know. We want a second stimulus package. We're not going to tell you what's in it, and we're not going to tell you what it's about. Well, come late July, the stuff is going to hit the fan, because all this is going to heat up very quickly and very finite. In the meantime, you stay with me, please, because there's a lot of updates. There's a lot of things you need to know. I don't care that the vacationing congressmen are sipping those Mai Tais. There's a lot of stuff that is clicking on a timeline right now that you need to know right now, that's expiring right this moment or in the next few days, and you need to know that now. Because ultimately, if you sit back and not follow this channel for a couple of weeks and come back around late July, the financial cliff may have already fallen. As always, stay with LALATE.